Hello, cat aspirants. Welcome to another episode of Build the Cat series. Today, we will be looking at the AC dealership problem from DILR section of CAT 2023. So, we have an AC company in which we have four dealers, D1 to D4, and the company is evaluating sales performance for these dealers. We have two variants of AC, window and split, and both of these can be of either inverter type or non-inverter type. Then we also know that 25% of window of ACs is window and rest are split. Also, of all the inverter ACs, 20% are of window variant. And we have a lot of information regarding the dealership and the ACs, number of ACs. So to solve this kind of problem, where we have a lot of information present, first we need to categorize the information into three different types, similar to this. So the first sentence, every dealer sold at least two window ACs, is a universal sentence, which we need to remember throughout solving the problem. We need to see whether this condition is not breached while we are solving the entire problem. Second, we have some absolute numbers. D1 sold some 13 inverter ACs, while D3 sold 5 non-inverter ACs. This is the statement which gives you absolute information, concrete information regarding some numbers of ACs. Similarly, 3 also is an absolute statement. Statement 4 and 5 are more of comparative statements. For example, the number of split ACs sold by D1 is twice the number of window ACs sold by it. So we know that if one of them would be X, the another would be 2X. So these are the comparative problems or statements. Again, fifth is a comparative statement. I'm marking these in blue. Sixth is a absolute statement and a comparative statement. It's a partial statement in between those two. So D2 and D3 are the only ones who sold window non-inverter ACs. That means D1 and D4 for window non-inverter ACs would be 0. And also the second statement of this point is a comparative statement. And the final statement is also a comparative statement. So once we have categorized the information, let's now tabularize the given and try to find what we need to find out here. So we have four dealers, two kinds of ACs, each divided into two subcategories. So a total of 16 slots to be filled. So once we fill the 16 slots, we will have a solution to this problem. So let's start by using the green statements first, the concrete statements. First is 6 window non-inverter ACs are sold in the city and 36 split inverter ACs are sold. So I can just put the non-inverter ACs as 6 and split inverter ACs as 36. Next, D2 and D3 only sold window non-inverter ACs. So D1 and D4 would become 0. Also, D2 and D3, D2 sold twice the number of these ACs sold by D3. So as D2 and D3 would be summing up to 6, therefore the only possible X and 2X values which we can find from 6 is 4 and 2. Hence, the non-inverter AC's window type would be, for D2 it would be 4 and for D3 it would be 2. And D1 and D4 it would be NA, which means they have not sold any AC of this category. Next is D1 has sold 13 inverter ACs, but this can be windows or split, both of them. Hence, we don't know which one of this is which, how much. Hence, we will not be placing it in the table right now. D3 has sold 5 non-inverter ACs. We know that D3 has sold two windows non-inverter type. That means it would be three split non-inverter type. So we can put 3 in non-inverter split type for D3. Next, we know that out of the inverter AC sold, 20% were of the window variant. So split, we know that. So the split would be 36, 80%. And 80% is 36. So total would be 45. And hence, Windows inverter type would be 9. Similarly, out of the entire city, 25% are of the window variant, which is 15, while the rest is the split variant. That means 45 would be the split variant. If 45 is the split variant, 9 would be non-inverter because 36 is the inverter type. So we have now the totals of all the windows and split category. Now, since we have utilized all the information, let's look at what information is left. So now we have the comparative statements. So D3 and D4, they have equal number of split inverter ACs, and while this number is half of the ACs similar type sold by D2. So if I make D3 and D4 split inverter type as X, then it would be 2x for D2. So let's add those values in the form of variables. Next I have is D3 and D4. They have an equal number of window ACs. And this is 1/3 of the number of similar ACs sold by D2. So if I consider, because D4 has not sold any non-inverter type AC, let me consider that the inverter type AC for D4 window category is Y. If this is Y, then the Windows type total for D4 would be Y because non-inverter is 0. Hence, for D3 also, Windows has to come, sum has to come total of Y. Since non-inverter is 2, then inverter would be Y minus 2. Similarly, for D2, total should come as 3Y because D3 and D4 are 1/3 of D2. Hence, D2 would be 3Y minus 4 because non-inverter is 4. So for inverter, it would be 3Y minus 4. And lastly, we have that the number of split ACs sold by D1 is twice the number of window ACs sold by it. So if I consider the inverter AC sold by D1 window version as 2, then split would be 2Z. If this is Z, then this would be 2Z. So now we have utilized all the information that was given to us except these two particular points, that every dealer has at least 2 window ACs and D1 has sold 13 inverter ACs. But I'm not able to utilize this information directly. Hence, I will have to apply some reasoning now to arrive the next part of the solution. So, if every dealer has sold 2 window ACs, that means the minimum value for Y should be 2. Because if Y is less than 2, then D4 would fall. The windows for D4 would fall less than 2, which is not possible. Hence, let me assume that Y is equal to 2 for now. I can go beyond 2 as well, but let me start with 2. So if Y is equal to 2, then inverter type for D4 windows would be 2, for D3 would be 0, for D2 would be 2, and Z would come out to be 5. If Z is 5, that means split version for D1 is total is 10, and if inverter type is 13, that means his inverter is 8. Then the total would add up to be 5 and 8, 13. So this would be 8 and non-inverter would be 2 because the total should be 10. Now, this is the case when Y is equal to 2. So this is a possible solution. Now, if D1 inverter type is 8 and total is 36, that means 4x should be equal to 28. That means x should be equal to 7. Hence, the inverter split type values for D2, D3, D4 would be 14, 7 and 7 respectively. Next, let us assume y is equal to 3. If y is equal to 3, then Windows inverter for D4 should be 3, for D3 should be 1, for D2 should be 5. If I add these three, they become 9. Hence, Z becomes 0, which is not possible because each dealer should have sold at least 2 ACs. Hence, assuming y is equal to 3 is not a possible scenario. Same will happen with y is equal to 4 and beyond. Hence, the only possible solution we have is when y is equal to 2, which was the first case. Now let's look at the questions. How many split inverter ACs did D2 sell? Split inverter ACs for D2 is 14. Hence the answer is 14. What percentage of ACs sold were non-inverter type? So out of the 60 total, the non-inverter is 15, which is 25%. Hence answer is option C. Next, total number of ACs sold by D2 and D4. Since D1 and D3 together sells 27, so D2 and D4 together will sell 33 because the total is 60. Hence answer is 33. Which of the following statements is false? Necessarily false. D2 sold highest number of ACs. Something which I cannot say right now because we don't know the non-inverter type split between D2 and D4 for split category. So A is not the answer. D4 sold more split ACs as compared to D3. With something which I cannot answer right now because this can go beyond D4 split ACs can go beyond 10 as well. Then D1 and D3 sold equal number of split ACs, which is a necessarily true statement, 10 and 10 each. And lastly, D1 and D3 together sold more ACs as compared to D2 and D4, which is necessarily false because we just saw that D1 and D3 they have sold less than D2 and D4. So answer is option D. Next we have is if D3 and D4 sold an equal number of ACs, then what is the number of non-inverter ACs sold by D2? So if D3 and D4 sold 10 ACs each, that means this particular highlighted field, which I'm pointing out right now, would be 3. That means for D2, split non-inverter would come as 1 because totaling is 9 and we already know Windows non-inverter is 4. Hence, non-inverter total for D2 would be 5. Option B. So what did we learn from this particular problem? Is categorizing of information, classifying them into different clusters is an important trick for such problems. We can categorize them into 3 categories. First is the absolute value statements, which give you some concrete information regarding the values directly. Always add these values as soon as possible. Then we have the comparative statements. Always target the categories in which you already have filled the absolute values first. Look for those comparative statements first to be analyzed. And third, we have the universal statements, which you need to remember always so that those particular statements are not breached as you are solving the problem. So hope you have learned something today. You can tell us in the comments what DILR question you want us to solve next, and we will try to include those in our next episodes. Till then, stay motivated and stay focused, and we will see you in the next episode.